Dominance matrices. Keywords to look out to know you're doing dominance matrices are the words tournament or round robin. Round robin means everyone plays everyone. And we've got that situation in this diagram here. So we've got A, B, C, and D, could be players or tournament teams in a tournament. And so there's an arrow connecting every one to every single one. But this time they are arrows. So there are arrows. This is a key point to make. All right, so let's get ourselves some space here and let's build our matrix. Now, just like before, we have an A, a B, a C, and a D, and then we have an A, a B, a C, and a D. And on the left, we have the winner. And on the top here, we have the loser. All right, now teams don't normally play themselves in a match, so that's why A cannot play A, B cannot play B, C cannot play C, and D cannot play D. And if we look at this diagram, A beat C, so the arrow is going away. So A, winner of C, but that's the only arrow going out from A, so zeros against B and D as well. Let's have a look at the next one, which is Team B. Now, Team B beat A and beat D. So B beat A and D, but didn't because the arrow is going in from C. And then let's have a look at the next one. So C beat B and D. So C beat B and D, but lost to A. And then D just beat A. That was it by the looks of it. So D beat A, but lost to B and lost to C. Now, let's go back to this idea of the arrows and what does that mean? Well, this means if we look along our leading diagonal, we have the opposite of symmetry. So let's look at the pairs of these things. So this 1 pairs with this 0. So B beat A, therefore A cannot beat B. So you have a 1 and a 0. And again, here we have a 0 and a 1. And here we have a 1 and a 0. We have a 1 and a 0. These are all the pairs that match up symmetrically. So they must be opposite each other. It's the opposite of what we've had in previous situations. So we've got a 0 here, we must have a 1 here, and we've got a 0 here and a 1 here. So that's important when you're looking at these pairs. There's a winner and a loser. So a 1 pairs with a 0 pairs with 1. And this actually helps you solve an awful lot of questions. Now, all this can be put into a calculator, which I've done over here. But let's have a look at what we're actually dealing with. So let's put our labels back on here. So it's A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D. And this is our winners and our losers. Let's sum across this way, which means add them up. So A has a total of 1, B has a total of 2, C has a total of 2, and D has a total of 1. And that makes sense because when we look at B did in fact win 2 games, and C won 2 games. So that's what it means, that if we look at B and C, they both won 2 games. So B and C won 2 games. That doesn't tell us who is dominant, does it? Because they're both on a value of 2. So we have to work out a way of doing this differently. Now, this is where the whole idea of squaring things comes into play, because we can talk about d squared and get this matrix. What we're actually interested in, though, is that t equals d plus d squared, and that's our total dominance. So you could have actually gone straight into it and put in d plus d squared there, and then we get this table matrix here. Now, putting our labels back on here, just as we did before, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D. If we sum this way again, we get 3, 4, 5, 2. And this gives us a ranking. So C has the highest number. So C equals the first team because it had a value of 5 from there. And then we can say B was the second strongest team because it had a value of 4. A was the third ranked team because it had a total dominance. This is the T values. These are the T values here of 3. And then, of course, D came last, which is with 2. So when we work out the total dominance values by summing across like so, the one with the highest value is the most dominant and the winner, the highest ranked. All right, so we got to gain a total dominance question. We know that for because we've got that magic word. We got it. Where is it? Tournament. There you go. And so when you got a tournament, you know that we're looking at dominance. And it actually talks about this. All this jargon here is just talking about what the matrix represents, which we just did. Basically, what they want to say is there's a mistake in here. And remember what we talked about, which was that we have our line of symmetry along the leading diagonal there, and all the pairs must make sense. So this one with this 0, that's okay. This 0 with this 1, that's a pair. Let's try another color. We got a 0 and a 1. Sorry, that's not very the brightest highlight, is it? We've got a 0 and a 1, so that's a pair. We've got a 1 and a 0, and we got a 0 and a 0. Now that's a problem because they're both 0. Someone had to win. And if you look at that, that's between M and I, which must be between India and Mustafa. So the answer is A. Let's just check some of the other ones as well. So look, that's 0 and 1, so that's a correct pair. Let's do green. We've got 0 and 1, that makes a nice pair. 0 and 1, it's another nice pair. And 1 and 0. So they're all pairs. Remember I said that all the pairs have to be have a 1 or a 0. The only one that doesn't match up is I and M, and that's where the error is. So when they're looking for the error in the matrix, the error must be someone's misrecorded that match. Okay, this is from the 2017 exam, and it's very similar to the one we just did. And we got that lovely word round robin, so we know we're talking about dominance matrices. And if we look at this, we got to work out the values of F, G, and H. All right, so let's have a look at what we know. We know everything on that must be a 0, and so H must be 0. So H equals 0, H equals 0, H equals 0, they're okay, but that must mean that E and B are already wrong. All right, and remember, if we're looking at the whole thing, oh, I should put that highlighter back. We're looking across that divide. We've got a 1 and a 0. You see what I mean? And then we got a 1 and well, it must be a 0. So F must be 0. So we want F equals 0. Well, that just leaves A, doesn't it? If we look at it, A must be 0. Let's just check out G while we're at it. So if we look at G, G is, we don't know, but there's a 0, so G must be 1. And so again, G equals 1 there. So it's definitely confirming that A is the right answer. And this is one from the 2016 exam, so they really love doing these questions. I think this one was a bit harder. So what they've said here is, again, they've talked about 1 and 2 step dominance matrices, so you know it's about dominance matrices because they talked about 1 and 2 step dominance. And you can see they also got the other magic words like tournament in there, which help you to know that we're talking about dominance matrices, if that wasn't obvious already. Now, there's nothing wrong with this dominance matrix. If we look, there's all zeros in here, and all the pairs work out nicely. So there's nothing wrong with all of that. What they're saying is, if I use that idea of total dominance, and that's what they're sort of saying here. It says that the team with the highest sum was ranked number 1, the team with the second highest rank was number 2, and so on and so on, by calculating the sum of the thing. So what they're saying is we want that situation of t equals d plus d squared, and then working out who's got the highest number to be ranked number 1. And they're saying if you do this on this matrix, you will find that C is ranked number 1. And so changing just one match of these choices here, which of those changes, just one change, will make Team A actually the winner. So all you've got to do is you take this and you put it into your calculator, and I've called it D. You don't have to. You can use X on the front of your calculator. No one's going to come around and tell you off. That's just an efficiency, and this is really a question about efficiency, by the way. So we put in our D plus D squared, and we get this over here. Now, let's just put our labels back on. So A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D. Remember, we sum this way. We've got 3, 4, 5, 2, because I stole this example for the earlier explanation. And you can see that C was ranked highest. So what we need to do is just change some of these results and put them back up here, and it should flow through the whole calculator. So when you're using your calculator, don't type it all again. Just go back and stab your pen on the screen like that and change those ones and zeros, and it'll flow through once you press execute, EXE. Now, having read the actual report that they give you when they give the answers, they just said this is the way to do it. Suck it and see. So if we want to change the results between A and B, well, that's between A and B, that's this pair, isn't it? So that's a 1 and a 0. So all you do is just stab your thing here and change those to 0 and 1. So instead of 1 and 0, 0 and 1. And you let it all flow through. And we got A, B, C, D. You're summing this way, you end up with 5, 2, 4, 3. Well, A has got the highest number. It's now ranked number 1. That does work. Lucky for us, option A, when we did the suck it and see, did give us the correct value. Let's just check a couple more to see if we get some practice on that, so that we don't freak out. But as an exam technique, again, I would, put a little mark next to A and then move on. And then if you've got time, come back and double check it. So you might put a little star next to it saying, I've got a quick answer, come back to it later. So let's try out some other shifts. So if we were to change A and D, then that's this pair here. So instead of the 1 and the 0, we got the 0 and the 1, and we let it all flow through. And we got our A, B, C, D, and we count 4, 4, 4, 0. So if that changed, that'll all be equal, A, B, and C. D would be the biggest loser, a bit like Afghanistan in the last World Cup. Although they did play nicely. So let's change the result for B and C, which is that 1 and 0. So we switch them over to 0 and 1, and we press execute and let it all flow through. And if we look at our values, A, B, C, D, we get 2, 6, 2, 2. So that one makes B the most dominant, so that's not the correct answer. We already know the correct answer is A. That's the correct one, but I just wanted to show you a couple more times what was going on so that it made a bit more sense to you.